Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue. Tonight, I have the pleasure to continue the discussion, the dialogue on what we have on ASEAN Economic Community. And as you know, it's been more than 7 months already that Cambodia is fully integrated into the ASEAN community. And in there's the ASEAN Economic Community. And this is where the topic I want to focus. Tonight, I have the pleasure to have two very good friends, Chu Sengkok from Singapore, and I will ask him to introduce himself later on, and a longtime friend also, Matthew Randall, who is wearing a few hats, which I will let him also introduce himself. But the topic we're going to focus is all about how the ASEAN Economic Community is changing the economic landscape, the development landscape of the various countries in the Southeast Asian region. And we will touch, if we can, on more detailed aspect on the legal, because all of us today happen to be all lawyers, and we sure do not want to miss the legal dimension, because at the end of the day, ASEAN now is a chartered-based, is a rule-based organization, and having a solid legal framework in each different country as a region is very important. Let me start now with my good friend Sengkok. So why don't I give you a few minutes to just introduce yourself a bit, where you're coming from, what you're doing now.
Okay, thanks, Sok. My name is Sengkok. I am the chairman of a network of law firm called Zico Law, which is a network of independent local firms focused only on the ASEAN region. So we are present in 8 out of the 10 ASEAN countries, with another country, Philippines, very soon. And what's unique about our network is we only have a presence in ASEAN region, and we have as members local lawyers distinguished in their own countries, so that we create a network of shared value in the vision of ASEAN. So for example, Sipana here is a good friend, and his firm is a member of my network. The other hat that I wear is also, I'm the managing director of a company listed in Singapore called Zico Holdings Inc., which is a supporting company that supports and helps the law firms in ASEAN. Again, that is a unique company that we created and floated in 2014, November. Purely because we recognized that the law firms in the network and other service providers were in need of support, either in terms of investments, technical expertise, management experience. So we spun off a company which today is working closely with the law firms in the network. So I wear the hat of the managing director of that company, and I also oversee the chairing of the Zico Law Network, and it continues to attract my attention that the ASEAN region is really where I think we will see a lot more developments. So, yeah.
Matthew, I invite you today here more in your capacity of an ASEAN capacity, because you are the Secretary General of the ASEAN Federation of Employers, right?
Yeah, correct. So I've been in Cambodia for 20 years or so now, always in the legal sector, a number of hats, but always in the legal sector. So one of my roles is as Secretary General of the Cambodian Employers Federation, CAMFIBA. For this 2 years, we hold the chair of the ASEAN Confederation.
Okay.
So we're looking at AEC, ASEAN from the perspective of the employer's interests, both as it impacts on Cambodia, but for this current 2 years, also as it impacts as between the various ASEAN countries. But like I said, surely from an employer's perspective.
Good. Well, Sengkok, we've been in the ASEAN Economic Community. It's been now it's going to 8 months, right?
Yes.
What do you see as a region as a whole? How do you see the economic interaction? The connectivity of this country together. The impact on the various economy.
Well, I think a significant event was when we all, as a community, formally adopted the AEC in December 2015. So we are now formally AEC, and I think that created a formal if you like, agenda and platform for all the ASEAN businesses and political leadership to work together. I think, Sipana, one of the things that has attracted a lot of attention, the ASEAN companies themselves are growing. We use a term called
The
multi-ASEAN corporation.
Versus
MNC.
multinational corporation.
Yes, and the MAC is different because if you just think about it, we have in Cambodia, you have people like Maybank, Cambodia, Kampu Bank, which is from Malaysia, CIMB, which are all multi-ASEAN corporations. You have PTT from Thailand that are investing here, and they are investing in the region.
Yes.
You have Central Group from Thailand who are investing, Bangkok Bank, and then from Indonesia, you have them investing around the region. So these companies are part of what we see a growing intra-ASEAN trade, separately from going outside, and also from multinationals. And I think this is a very positive development. And the reason this is happening is they see the growth and integration of ASEAN. So, for example, one of the biggest players in the banking sector, the Malaysian banks, are in Philippines, Cambodia, Thailand, and all that, because they serve a population of 650 million, as opposed to their respective country. And I think this is the growing trend, and I think the creation of the AEC 2025 blueprint will encourage more of such integration. And I think this is positive. Businesses, especially the SMEs, now have an opportunity to link across each other through networking, through referrals, and also personal friendship and bonds. Like you and I, we're friends, and Matthew. It's a different way of doing business, but it is also riding on the wave of economic grade integration, trade flow. I think the ASEAN intra-trade growth is very impressive. So I think this is something that's happening.
Matthew, from the employer perspective, right? Do you share that view that you have this ASEAN cooperation, right?
No, it's very true, and a point St. Kok just made. I mean, enterprises are growing, and that's very much the case here in Cambodia now, particularly recently in the last 3 years. So, as CAMFIB, as the ACE, the ASEAN Confederation, previously we were looking at an employer's perspective vis-a-vis or pertaining to industrial relations. So, how the employers interact with the union movement, et cetera, et cetera. What's happened now, though, is we're looking at the employer's interest vis-a-vis the rest of the region, because we've got Cambodian companies here. Accleda Bank, for example, now operate in a number of countries, and we've got a lot of companies here, enterprises, grown to a size whereby they're attracting foreign investment into them. But that's coming from within ASEAN, like St. Kok said. This is we've got Singaporeans investing directly into Cambodian enterprises. So they're grown to meet that sort of interest. So from an employer's perspective, we're now trying to look at how to best integrate that. There's a lot of non-tariff barriers we still have to grapple with this and the other. So they're the sorts of things we're looking at. So it's grown sizably in this AEC this year, not just in terms of employment mobility, which was our main concern previously, but now this sort of mergers and acquisitions that's going on within the ASEAN region. It's growing enormously, and it's impacting Cambodia.
Well, I think a lot of people just mentioned about the ASEAN Economic Community, but as you know, there are two other pillars, which is the political security, which I'm not going to touch on that one. But I want to stress the other pillar, which is very, very important, but yet so little talk about, which is the social cultural, right? Because the ability for me, for you to just buy an air ticket and fly to KL, fly to Bangkok, fly to Singapore, have a meeting, and fly back for dinner at home without having the visa. To me, these are what I call people-to-people connectivity, and this is probably the backbone of the success of this economic integration. But from your perspective, you mentioned a lot about the bank. But of course, in Cambodia, we have most of the major ASEAN banks are here. Any other sector you see that same phenomenon?
In Cambodia, for example, you have Pakson, which come from Malaysia, which again is in the retail side. You got Singapore investors into the F&B sector. Break Talk here. You got So I think it is part of the people movement that you mentioned. As people move across borders, they want to eat the food that they are familiar with, and likewise, each of the countries that I see, for example, I was in Myanmar recently, and I saw in Yangon a lot more like Singaporean, Malaysian type of restaurant, because the people move around, they bring the food that they want, and there's an acceptance of the kind of food that we eat. We may have different tastes,
Yes.
but the fundamental ingredients are the same.
yes.
You know, in Myanmar, for example, I give you, they have a dish called we Malaysia call laksa,
Yeah.
which is a fish paste food. It's just an example of bread which you take for breakfast and or even lunch. In Myanmar, they call it mohinga.
Yes.
I don't know what it's called in Cambodia. In ultimately, we come from the same region, the
Yes.
same culture, same social roots. And what we have done is, as we grow across as countries, but there's still a common culture of religion, food, and if you like, value system.
Yes.
That makes it easier to do business.
Yes.
We have a common heritage, if
Yeah.
I can call that.
Yeah.
And I think the movement of people that you just mentioned is an example. If you get onto an AirAsia plane, for example,
Yes.
today,
Yes.
you see in that plane, all kinds of ASEAN people just you can't tell who's from
Yes.
Cambodia, Vietnam, or even Myanmar. Everybody is just flying together, as you say. That eases a lot of the doing business
Yes.
in the region. I think, and that will continue to grow. Because people are now more mobile.
Yes.
The freedom, as you said, of movement without visa.
Yes.
Everybody can fly. And also the ability of businesses to cross borders. I think all these things are creating a very vibrant ASEAN. And ASEAN is the third largest in Asia and the seventh largest in the world. We are a huge trading
Yes.
company. So I think we are a significant player. We can punch above our weight. I'm very happy to see that.
I think you mentioned Sekok earlier, and probably Matthew, to some extent, you sort of represent the employer, which by default we tend to think they're a big company. But there's also a rising wave
Oh, yes.
of SME,
Oh, yeah.
of young entrepreneur,
Yeah.
which I think this is also an opportunity for a country like Cambodia. We're a bit behind in the early stage, right? But with the opening, you see this wave of best practice, this learning curve. You see this exposure. I mean, like for example, you mentioned to me before the brown, right? The brown coffee, and how other country they would like to invite them.
No, that's right. I mean, like so. I mean, SMEs. It's an interesting point. The vast majority of our membership at Country is SMEs, and they're the ones now looking. They're looking at AEC as an opportunity. There's two aspects. It's in terms of the business expansion, but also a pool of talent. So you're now starting to see Cambodian SMEs here, which have grown significantly, both in terms of size and sophistication, and now attracting management from other ASEAN countries. So you'll go into, like when you just mentioned, Brown and enterprise of this nature. Now there's a bigger pool of expertise which is now readily available who can work, and it adds into this cultural issue, social issue, to be able to work across these different nations with these different nationalities and whatnot. But Brown now, like you said, I've had it mentioned to me by a prospective client who is setting up a coffee shop, has a concession in a particular country, looking for a coffee shop to fill that concession. Rather than the Starbucks, etc., looked to Brown. They'd been here, they'd seen Brown, and they liked what they saw. They thought it was very fitting in the ASEAN context, in the Asian context. So for them, that was the perfect fit. And that's in a completely another country. So we're seeing, and that's at the SME level, we're seeing this interest across borders. But I think it is a lot to do with this interconnectivity, the freedom of travel. People are everywhere now; they can see.
But Senko, just to fill you in, Brown is a group of brother and cousin. 4 or 5 of them, right? Young, and now they have a chain of coffee, high-end coffee.
I saw them in Taiwan. The same one, Brown.
They're still in Cambodia, but they employ about 1,000 people now. Huh?
Well, I mean, one of the things I wanted to say was, in fact, you talk about food, right? Old Town Coffee.
Yes.
If you reach an airport in Jakarta, KL.
Yes.
Everywhere now, there are also another coffee chain that came out from Malaysia, SME.
Yeah.
One of the things that people keep forgetting is more than 95% of businesses in ASEAN are SMEs.
Yes.
And because of that, there's so much more growth. The SMEs tend to be family owned, or at least they tend to be very much small, kind of what I call services type production, and they are the ones with the most appetite for growth. And they are the ones that can innovate and take new ideas to grow. And I think this is where we will see much more growth from the SMEs.
Great. I think we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, I want to focus more on how can the role of the legal framework, the role of corporate compliance, for example, how we can help bridge this gap, how we can make this connectivity happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back to the dialogue. Sengkok, I want to focus a bit more on the ASEAN Economic Community, sort of like a bit different than what we know of the European Community, for example,
Yes.
Because why? Because geographically we're a bit different. You have the landmass, Greater Mekong sub-region, then you have the island country, the Philippines, Indonesia, and then economic development. You have a multi-tier, more advanced like Singapore, then the less advanced, the middle, religion, that's the same thing. Legal system, you have some common law, you have some civil law. So I think this is more, I would say, the diversity.
Yes.
But how can we, in this connecting world now, how can we find way or opportunity through this diversity?
Yeah, it's a very good point. So one of the things that a lot of people must appreciate or may not fully appreciate, we are not like a European community where we have the same law system, the same standards and all that. The reality is ASEAN was forged on the basic premise that we work on consensus because we recognize the diversity of the, as you say, development, the economy, the social. But rather than look at it as a weakness, I think we look at diversity as a strength. We accept the fact that we are that different, but it doesn't stop us to look for common areas.
Yes.
So I give an example. I mean, although as a matter of law, as you mentioned, that the Myanmar, Malaysia, and Singapore have a common law system.
Yes.
Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Indonesia adopt the French Civil Code. But that has not stopped the MAC, as you call the multi-ASEAN corporations from migrating. What it means is you look for common features that help you to work together. So a very good example is people say, okay, we can't be the same, we can't be at the same level of language, the same level of development, but let's look at the common areas that we can invest in and grow. So, for example, the banks have come in and put retail banking because retail banking, it doesn't matter what language you're in or which system, you still need banking system. So the banks in ASEAN have all adopted a similar system. Another example, when we talk about the retail side, it doesn't matter where you are, what you do. You still need to buy goods. You still need a very good, efficient retail chain. So you got Pakistan in Myanmar, Pakistan in Cambodia and Vietnam. So you don't look for things that you can't do. You just say, okay, we'll just go in and do those things. And over time, as more and more things get done, I think people recognize that they look for common things to grow. So talking about lawyers, although the ZICO Law Network has 8 countries with different legal systems within the network, but it doesn't stop the partners and the lawyers to work together on clients when they need help in each country. And I think the network has grown now. It started with about 1 office, and there's about 80 lawyers. Now it's 300 lawyers in 8 countries and growing. And what does that say? Does that say that despite all the diversity, we have grown and thrive on that diversity? And I think that's an encouraging signal.
I want to get Matthew a bit on this diversity, how as a commercial sort of like arrangement, dispute settlement, that's what I'm trying to get. Arbitration, for example, how a company across this multicultural, multi-jurisdictional have decided to go on arbitration, for example. This is one way, one bridge between the legal system, common law, civil law, right? We decide, look, when we have a dispute, we're going to go for arbitration. You're quite involved in that process here.
I was been involved in arbitrations here, mainly around labour and whatnot. But in terms of the law firm practice, yes, we've been involved in cross-border disputes. We've got an investor from one country investing into this country. A dispute comes about, and we've looked to arbitration. What's interesting about arbitration is, you've got your Singapore Arbitration Centre, for example. We've used the Hong Kong Arbitration Centre as well. who have their own set of rules, and people are basically agreeing upon these will be the rules of play for our dispute settlement. So it doesn't really matter what jurisdiction you've come from, they decided upon the rules, and it worked fairly well. So it's an interesting point that St. Cock made, was, us versus the EU, where they have institutions, they have an EU Parliament that's making rules that applies to each of the countries.
Yeah.
We don't have that here.
Yes.
But I don't think we found any problem without having that, because when we, as lawyers, when we're dealing with cross-border transactions, it's around negotiating JVAs, it's around this sort of thing, and the different countries' laws don't really impact on us so much. I mean, a lot of it's sort of commercial structuring, this, that, and the other. Where the laws differ, we'll have our lawyers looking at it, maybe there's a quirky thing, but on the whole, there's not that much difference. There's sort of impacts on business in the commercial laws. And, and we deal largely, and when you're talking about trade, we're dealing with the commercial laws. So in the commercial aspect, the basic principles are pretty much the same. So we haven't found it difficult whatsoever.
So you're saying that a Singaporean from a common law legal system would not have any qualm about coming, say, for example, to Cambodia, which is pretty much a civil law country now.
Yeah, and negotiating a very satisfactory joint venture agreement, absolutely. Where they have qualms, of course, sometimes maybe the enforcement of that contract, that's a different issue.
Yes.
Like you said, there's different levels of development amongst the different states in the region, and that impacts on, if you get to disputes and the enforceability of those contracts, etc., etc. But the other one, and this I think was touched upon before, is this, the compliance. I mean, getting your books in order, that's more a question of now. These more developed states over the years have evolved these great systems. They've gone through as these standards have evolved. Now we can leapfrog right to the front of that. We can impose upon our SMEs, these international standards right now. So that's where really some of the problems arise. Is that the issues of compliance and accounting standards and the other may differ in terms of practices. But that's now all sort of merging, becoming one, as we're trying to attract business from other states.
Senko, I want to build on what you said about the compliance. Different country have different system, different company have different level of development, of sophistication, of legal need, of different compliance aspect. Zico Group as a whole, you have legal services, you have non-legal services.
Yes.
Because not everything is all about legal.
No,
Tell us a bit how we can find, a stream of solution. I like to use the word solution. To respond to different need, whether they are SME or they are multi-ASEAN corporation, for example.
Yes. I think that's a good point. I think the Zico Group started as legal, but together now we offer integrated services. Apart from the law firm network, we offer trust, we offer consultancy, we offer secretarial support, capital market, corporate. And the reason we're doing that is, again, responding to the unique ASEAN way of doing business, where a company comes along as me and says, look, I need a law, but I also need somebody to help me to set up a trust, to run my company, to help me to business match with another company, or even to get financing through a capital market advice. So we have created a unique company which has, apart from legal, a range of other services under the Zico Group, where the Zico law is the legal part. And I think this does well in ASEAN because the nature of businesses, especially the SMEs, they have one trusted advisor and they say, can you look after me all around the place? Now, because of that, we are also spreading it and expanding to the rest of the ASEAN region, where the companies or the firms in the network can help each other to learn. So a lot of the good work is come from training, from exposure to practices, secondment of lawyers. One of the key things we do is we second lawyers from various offices to each other. So there's a common interface and sharing of ideas.
Cross.
And also you see in the last ASEAN blueprint, they adopted one of the things that have come out is there are more competition law now in ASEAN. There are now 9 countries ASEAN adopting a similar competition law. You will see a natural progression towards common standard. But the difference between ASEAN and, say, the EC is not imposed from the top. It's not supranational body. It is from the members who say, we want to do this together. We think it's a good idea, so you come as a consensus and build on it. So I think that has more buy-in than somebody coming and saying, thou shalt do that. I think the ASEAN way of doing is that, we think it's a good idea, we adopt it. And that's how companies have evolved, families have evolved, and I think that will continue to be the case. And I think we are seeing more and more of that. Every day, if people don't realize it, just walk down the streets of Phnom Penh or even Yangon or Ho Chi Minh, and you see the number of ASEAN multinational corporations doing business in the region. I mean, in the 10, 20, 30 years ago, you only see the MNCs now. Now it's part of this whole intra-trade. And I think this is a part of this, what I call this SME growth that I see. And I think what Matthew was alluding to is, compliance and all. They'll come because you have to raise the standard. But it comes from internal rather than from an external standard.
I think it's a lot also about this cross-pollination, that we see how Malaysia is doing, Malaysia seeing how Thailand is doing, and then every one of us is smart enough to pick, wait a minute, if the Thai can do it, why can we not do it, right? And ultimately, when you forge, the bond together, that's how you grow. And this is where I see in the rapid rise of this multi-ASEAN cooperation, which is quite new. Let's face it, it's very new. When we went to school, we study, we see all the time MNC, multinational corporation, TNC, right, transnational corporation. This multi-ASEAN corporation is a new nomenclature in our vocabulary. And it continues to rise. And this is something that we have to reckon with, we have to build on it, and we have to make sure that other young enterprise, most of them are part of the ASEAN Employer Association, how they can emulate that and grow.
And why it's successful, Sok, is that apart from the fact that 95% of businesses in ASEAN has another advantage. A huge number of the population are young. For example, I think Cambodia, Vietnam, or even Myanmar, a huge proportion, more than 50-70% are under 35. These are the people who are always ready, willing to embrace new ideas, technology, digital. And so they don't have a problem in terms of moving very fast up the chain if they learn something new. So we'll see, for example, many of Vietnam's economy was driven by Vietnamese who came back from US and drove the economy. We're seeing that in Myanmar, we're seeing that in Cambodia. And what these people bring is the willingness to embrace new ideas of doing business and taking the risk to set up new businesses. You mentioned the brown coffee. I mean, that's a young bunch of people, right? You wouldn't see that 50 years ago, but because of technology, because of the ability to, if you like, Uberize. People don't have any inhibition to grow. And I think that has allowed them to grow very fast. And I think ASEAN having a big proportion of the population under 35 means that we will leapfrog. We have an advantage over the Western country. We don't have a big aging population yet. Like Japan, like Europe. That they're worried there is pension, Australia and all that. Here, it's all about the young people. Of course, the challenge is also to manage their expectations. They're very online. Social media is a big thing. They don't depend on the traditional media to communicate. But that is also part of what's exciting and makes it grow. So
2 months ago in Malaysia, Malaysia hosts the World Economic Forum. And the theme was all about the fourth industrial revolution, which is all about this so-called Uberization.
Social media.
It's all about turning technology to go to the next phase beyond computer automation, that sort of thing. And this is, to me, is an empowerment process.
I'm sure it's not just everywhere in ASEAN. You're seeing that the youths, even the old people like us, have to adopt to the fact that they communicate through social media. They do things on the basis of what the consumer want as opposed to what the rules say, and they change the rules. And I think it's part of this breaking down the barriers to do business. And I think most US and European and all that are confronting it. But what makes it easier for us, a lot of young people here are really willing to embrace it and adopt it. So there you are.
You see any challenge from the legal framework aspect-wise on how to sort of regulate that, or is that difficult to regulate?
Well, you can try, as some countries have, but the reality is the rules, you can try to shut down, give an example, as some countries have shut down the website, but they just set it up another place.
Yes.
The ability of dissemination of information is very difficult. It creates expectation of transparency, accountability. It comes hand in hand.
Yeah.
You allow the social media to thrive. You therefore also must allow some rules to be broken away that you cannot impose, because the reality, the young people really know how to reach out to each other. And I see it as a challenge.
Yeah, I think, the upshot is that it enable also economic opportunity for people who are not in an urban city, for example. They're in the province, and with the faster internet, 4G, 5G, certainly they are as equal, as capable as the guy in an urban city.
One of the biggest growth is mobile banking.
Yes.
People no longer need to go to they can be in rural areas. I mean, one of the biggest growth is mobile banking in Africa, in Myanmar, and all the way you can remit funds and wherever you are. You don't have to be in the city.
Yes.
And that creates opportunities for people to do business across urban, rural areas. And I think this is an example of technology and empowerment, as we were just talking about. And I think it will get more, not less. I think it's great. You mentioned the challenge of regulation. I mean, that will continue to be a challenge, and I'm not sure you can fully regulate the ability of people to just, literally speaking, explode the way they communicate with each other. Information is global.
Yeah. Senkok, I'm calling a time out now for this session, but I would say that we talk a bit about the trend, right? And this Uberization, this sort of like a fourth industrial revolution. But when we come back for the last part of our dialogue, I want to focus a bit more on the challenge of how the legal community in this regional and globalized world, the market pressure, and how the legal community is reacting. I think this is also a trend that whether you're in Cambodia, whether you're in Thailand or Singapore, you have to take account on this trend. Right?
Okay.
So we'll take a short break.
Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the dialogue. We talk a lot about trend, but more on a macro dimension. But now, Siko, I want to go a bit deeper. Trend, but more at a micro or the meso level. Meso in terms of institutional setting, but micro more in terms of firm level. Industry and then firm level. And perhaps we can talk something that is all dear to us, as we are all lawyers here. Something about the trend that is that we can see now in the legal profession, globally, regionally, and within our respective country.
Yeah, one of the trends that ASEAN is seeing, which is part of a global revolution, is what we call disruptions.
Yeah.
The word disruption means like banks are facing fintech, where people don't go.
What is fintech?
Fintech is financial technology, where people do direct banking using internet and all that. So they don't go to the banks; they go directly through technology platform.
Yeah.
The legal services, like financial services and others, are all facing the pressure. And this is under the whole phenomenon called disruption. So in the traditional model, the law firm has only lawyers doing the work and everything else.
Yeah.
Today, what you see is the companies who say, oh, well, we are transforming for financial services. Why can't the lawyers do the same thing? So you find law firms facing competition from young startups who provide alternative ways of delivering legal services. They do online services. They do contract lawyering. They do due diligence using technology as a platform. Now that has two advantages for a client or company. One, is cheaper, and secondly, more importantly, is faster because these are using technology.
Yeah.
This disruption, which started in the US, Europe, is happening now. So you'll find banks in Asia now saying we want, instead of just using lawyers all the time, there are certain documents that are online that they have to use, forms that they have to adopt. So this disruption is no different from the rest of the world, except ASEAN is catching up. Well, what that means, however, for lawyers, and other professionals is that you have to be prepared to embrace technology and be more, apart from being a good lawyer or a good accountant and all that, you must also know how to work better in a digital economy, if you like, in an environment where you're using your legal skills and technical skills and IT skills to be more relevant to the employer. I think this disruption will be faster in ASEAN because of the young people that I mentioned here. The SMEs, the young people here are very fast in adopting this. And I think this is a challenge for all professions, but for a country, it's good because it means two things. It means that the young people are able to get into business directly, which I think is good for the country, And second thing, it breaks down inefficient providers. I think that's one of the things. So
before I give you the floor, Matt, I just want to interject this. I think globalization of information is a great equalizer.
Yes.
30 years ago, we are at the mercy of some books.
Yes.
We don't know what's out there. We want to do something, we have no access to information. And you cannot make proper decision or decent decision when you don't have access to data. And I think the globalization of information is probably equalizing whether you're a small country, you're an advanced country or not. And the great thing is about the power of the youth, with their mind, their energy, their ambition, their drive to catch up. Now they have the tool to actually catch up. And that's why I see a lot of prospect for Asian growth because of this the dynamics of our youth. So Matthew, what do you think on how we can empower the youth? How can we help them to become efficient, to become relevant?
I think that in fact the empowerment, that's their advantage. What the program we're doing with CAMFIBA, AECE and ILO is called the Future of Work. And it hits on this exact issue. I mean, the point made before about a lot of these countries in this region are very young populations. So some of the more advanced countries like Singapore, Japan and whatnot have aging populations. So the ones like this country with the youth, the young population, have the advantage because information technology, the internet, that's their advantage. They're the ones who grasp that much quicker than anybody. So the fact that technology is advancing so quickly plays right into the hands of those countries with young populations. So we've recognized this with the ILO, with the Future of Work. We're trying to figure out how technology impacts on the workplace. What we should be training our people for now, we're trying to guess what the workplace will be like in 5 years from now. So we've had a series of meetings around ASEAN on this very issue. And what suddenly dawned on us was we can train our youth for jobs that don't even exist in these countries. So we were trying to figure out, what will the workplace be like in Cambodia? We don't even think about that now. We can train Cambodian lawyers, let's use law as an example, on what the rules are on contract in the Philippines, in Singapore. They can sit here in this country and take those instructions and draft those contracts because of information technology, because of the advancement of technology. So that's pretty much the way we're heading now. Realize that technology has made it one big wide open place. There's no borders in a sense. And so we're now trying to figure out what's the best job opportunities, and we're not restricting ourselves to the individual countries. So we can train kids up here in any sector for jobs that don't even exist in this country. So that's kind of where we're going. And it plays right into the hands of the youth because they're the first to grasp and understand, as we know from our own children, who can play these. I'm still a pinball guy, right? These kids can do these incredible computing. I've got no clue. But they can grasp the advances in technology much quicker than the older generation can. So it plays right into their hands.
Well, one thing I would add, why it's happened so fast is something that some of the countries in ASEAN, for example Myanmar and Cambodia, you can quickly adopt fourth generation 4G license because you didn't have to go through the analog and all that, some of the European countries, American, and even some of the older ASEAN countries. So you adopt straight away this great bandwidth and much more sophisticated IT system. The other thing is internet penetration. And ASEAN countries, many are like Myanmar, Cambodia, in the old days you didn't have internet all over the country. Now it's so fast. And when internet penetration in the rural areas and all this happening, that's why you have mobile banking happening. The rural urban divide, as you said, is blurring. Country, because with internet everybody can connect and then you can do business, you can teach people. Some of the countries in ASEAN have actually used the e-commerce to facilitate trade, but they also use internet to teach rural areas. And then you have, of course, medical field where people are able to get American doctors, surgeons doing teaching or literally performing operations in other country using internet. So everything creates this expectation that the IT platform, internet, is really, as you say, a great leveler. And I think it will continue to be the case. And I think,
perhaps, Sekong, you can share a bit how your group, as having 8 offices in ASEAN, right? But you will open soon in the Philippines, right?
Yes.
How about Brunei?
Brunei maybe later.
But otherwise, you are 9 out of 10 already. Okay.
Yes.
Grosso modo, you are a fully integrated ASEAN grouping, right? How are you? What are you doing in terms of enabling this cross-pollination of experience, of best practice, of mutual support of all this network there? In terms of capacity building.
I think you got a very good point. First thing we do is it's part of the program within the network that we second lawyers everywhere. So we've got, for example, we've had a lawyer from Malaysia in Phnom Penh for 4 or 5 years now, and we're sending more. We've got lawyers from Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in Myanmar. We've got Thai lawyers in Laos, because we recognize that Laos and Vietnam are very close. And then at the same time, there's a very rich program of secondment where lawyers from various offices cross each other. And that, apart from capacity building, is also sharing the cultural experience and what we call the soft skills. They understand each other. So when they do business later, they know that there is a difference, but at the same time, they're used to working together. This cross-pollination of ideas is very important. At the same time, training programs that we do are customized to the local, or if you like, the national kind of considerations. Although we have a framework that says you shall do joint venture or company or banking a certain way, but when we do the training, we incorporate the local element. So you get the best of both worlds. You get a standard that's pretty much across as a, if you like, a good standard, but you also recognize that to be effective, it needs to localize. So we are able to do that because the network has a shared value in having a good Zico law system, but at the same time, each of the country is run by leading professionals who tell us that, in this country you need to do this. And the lawyers, because they are seconded, or they understand this sensitivity. And I think it has worked for us. And that's why we always say we are independent network of professionals from each country. We don't run them, we support them. We don't, because it's very important to understand that the local sensitivity is important. We are there as a group to cross-sell, to provide all kinds of services. But at the end of the day, each country is very much the domain player in their own country. And that's something that has enabled the network to grow.
Well, I mean, what you just mentioned at the micro level, which is your group, right? But if you raise up the bar to more a meso level, which is more as a industry level, whether you're in accounting, which is much easier than law, because law you have to take into account the local law, the tradition, the customary law, but accounting, which is more straightforward international standard, you have engineering, you have architect. To me, that's the future of ASEAN. That's the future of ASEAN. Political security, we're still a little bit far, right? Because of our tradition, of our geography, of many different factors. But the economic and the social cultural pillar, supported by this professional, sectoral pillar, as I mentioned earlier, this profession that enable a Cambodian to partner with a Thai to partner with Vietnamese, architect, Vietnamese to be part of ASEAN, network. These are, to me, is the future of a community. Because the community, we always talk about the technical, the political, but we forgot what is the community made of? It's people. And relation is all with people. And the more you understand your fellow Vietnamese colleague, your fellow Thai colleague, your fellow Malaysian colleague, certainly you realize that you are richer
One of the key things of the ASEAN blueprint is people-centered.
Yes.
It expressly makes it important that we inclusive. The word
Yes.
is inclusive and people-centered, which means that you recognize that you need to have people and
Yes.
you need to inclusive. So what you just said, and that will create a success rather than
Yes.
rules-based.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I think unfortunately, this dialogue, before I thought 30 minutes was short. Now I still think 45 minutes is short because now we're coming at the end of the show. But I just want to say that we had a very good exchange, and the message I got from our short exchange is all about capturing the trend, understanding the trend, understanding that this trend will enable, if we are able to translate this trend into concrete, possibility. And here we stress more the possibility for the youth, the dynamism. And I think if we can do that, I think ASEAN will be a better community, a more powerful community, with the new generation eventually taking over our job.
Yes. Yes.
So on that note, Senkok, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Matthew, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank
And I'll see you next time you visit Cambodia.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of the show, and I hope you, the youth, you capture the message that we are trying to share here, which is that you are the future, the empowerment is yours, go make the best out of it, grab technology, and help build your community, your nation, and at the end, we will build the ASEAN Economic Community. So I'll see you next week. Good night.